For the first time in human history, we have something that cannot be manipulated, and there's a hard cap at 21 million. And that's one of the reasons why I think it is the greatest invention in human history. We're able to lead the charge, be one of the first cities on the planet to make a big move when it comes to Bitcoin. And when we're successful, we give other cities and other provinces and states and countries even more license.
How do you believe adopting Bitcoin could contribute to the economic growth of the city? What does it look like when this plan works out?
If our streets are in disrepair, if it's not safe to come to the city of Vancouver, if it's hard to get a permit, if trash removal doesn't happen, guess what? Our city fails. Right there, by shoring up our balance sheet, that's a big deal. The second thing is we're sending a signal to the rest of the planet that Vancouver's open for business. This is not just a soundbite where we go, hey, Bitcoin's kind of cool. No, we understand it. We understand the implications of it. A lot of people are struggling because they are getting paid in worthless pieces of paper. And so every year that passes on by, it seems like we're, as a society on fiat currency, we're digging a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger hole. This is a multi-generational foundational asset for the benefit of the city of Vancouver. And it changes everything.
Hey everyone, just a quick note before we start. Over the past few months, this podcast has been growing and I'm super grateful for that. Over 50,000 of you regularly tune in, but I've also seen that over 65% of you still haven't subscribed yet. So if you enjoy what I'm doing, if you enjoy the content and the conversations, please take 1 second to hit subscribe on YouTube or follow me on your favorite podcasting app. This small click actually makes a huge difference and helps fuel the algorithm so we can reach more people and educate them on Bitcoin. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching. Keep the comments going. Now let's dive into this episode. Well, I'm super happy you're here and I'm super excited to chat. I think you're doing very interesting things in the city that you govern. So I'm happy to explore that today. I heard you say on another podcast, Bitcoin is the greatest invention ever in human history. Now, there aren't that many elected officials yet that would describe Bitcoin as such. And yeah, I just wanted to start with how did you come to this conclusion and what makes Bitcoin such a big idea for you?
Yeah, if you asked me a year ago, I definitely would have said it was maybe in the top 10, but no, it is literally the greatest invention ever. And I think politicians, elected officials, and like the general public, I think they'll come to that conclusion in the next 5 years. So in no particular order, when you think of ignoring the narrative, the false narrative that's out there, it's actually great for the environment. And it's actually, it's going to stop, it's going to, put organized crime, nefarious activities. It's going to make it a lot harder to do that. It's going to stop a lot of wars from happening. It will shorten other wars. It's going to fix the way we, have nutritious food. We're going to be able to store energy and bring it into the future. So when you work, all the work we've done to date, we can actually store it. And it fixes the money glitch. For the first time ever, our money isn't flawed. And it's really profound. Even a couple of months ago, I knew how significant it was that it was capped at 21 million, but it didn't even really hit me till I realized, whoa, wait a sec. They're literally, and I said it, but I didn't realize it. There's nothing else in human history that can say it's completely finite. And that just one small thing is everything. It is the greatest invention ever. And I know it's built off the back of the internet. But even if humans didn't invent the internet, we still would have survived. With Bitcoin, it changes everything, including wars, including time preference, everything. It's just incredible.
Well spoken, like a true Bitcoiner, I'd say. But so what changed for you in that last year? I mean, I've been studying this for 10 years, and the understanding goes up and down. I know you have a background in the finance industry, also as an investment banker. So I mean, you were around money in the economy, etc. I'd assume you came across Bitcoin before, but what changed in that year when you went from maybe top 10 to the greatest
No,
invention?
I don't know. And at the risk of being caught in an echo chamber, I've just done a ton more work. So when and I know you know the story because you mentioned it, but when my son came up to me and said he wanted to buy Bitcoin, I had a pretty negative response. And then I started to do the work, and I read about 12 books around it, be it When Money Dies, Token Economy, The Bitcoin Standard, The Price of Tomorrow, Layered Money, a whole bunch of books. And then spoke with Jeff, obviously, who's a good friend, went to a bunch of conferences, and then I was hooked. And since that time, I've been consuming more and more information. I probably read about 40 books on the topic and adjacent topics as well. Been to even more conferences, spoken with more people. And so I think it's been a gradual process, but then about a year ago, I came to the conclusion that I don't want to be caught in an echo chamber. Are we missing something here? And I would literally pay anyone $1 million right now if they can give me a sound reason why Bitcoin doesn't work. I don't think I'm ever collecting on that $1 million.
Yeah.
When you go back to first principles and you just look at the data, this is like that. I think that's when it clued in, when I was ready to place that bet, and still there's really no takers. It says a lot, and the last argument, when you're debating someone who are, a lot of these guys are intelligent, by the way, and the last argument is, yeah, but.
Yeah. Well, or what happens when the solar flare comes, or the nukes come, or the internet goes off, etc. Yeah, I call that kind of like the end of the road arguments, right? I always point that out, like, okay, you're now at the end of the road, right? Like, if I answer this question correctly, you have to become a Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you share this, because it's like, this is something I wanted to ask you, because it's a common theme, right? Like, you come across Bitcoin, in this case your son, that you of course wanna listen to, right? Like, and you dismiss him, and then later on, when you actually do the work, you realize that you were wrong before. And like you just said, like a lot of critics are intelligent, but Bitcoin isn't really like an IQ test. It's more like an ego test. How do you look back on that now? Also, I mean, you have that background in finance, right? Like, that usually makes it a bit more difficult to actually grok Bitcoin, because you have worked in a certain industry or have been educated in a certain way. How was it for you? Like, what made that click for you personally?
Well, first, I don't think I take myself too seriously, and I've been wrong so many times. So for me, it's easy to go, oh yeah, I was wrong. Like, during the entrepreneurial journey, for example, if you have an ego and you're not willing to listen to people with diverse views, you'll drive off of a cliff pretty quickly and you'll be out of business. So I think from that perspective, it was pretty easy for me to pivot once I did the work. I do think a lot of people do have a challenge of, they do let their egos get in the way. And unfortunately for them, and I say this respectfully, Bitcoin doesn't give a shit. Right? It's kind of like, North Korea, they're going to ban the internet, and the only people that suffer are the North Koreans. So this is happening whether people want to believe it or not. What are there, like 650 million people that own at least one Satoshi on the planet? That's going to be a billion people by the end of this year, probably 2 billion the following year, and then the third or fourth year, everyone else under the sun. And so, gradually, then suddenly.
Bitcoin custody is evolving, and while self-custody is important, it has its own risks and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your custody setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-signature vault, guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control. Your funds are fully auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Check out onrampbitcoin.com through the link below and schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to get to know them and learn more about their offering. Probably should clip this because actually today the mayor of Amsterdam actually had some sort of press release or some article, or she shared her opinion where she said the government, the nation should ban cryptocurrency payments and ban Bitcoin because it's been used in criminal activity, etc., etc. Well, she obviously did not do the work, right? Because you cannot ban Bitcoin. But I find it so interesting, like as the mayor, you are basically the CEO of Vancouver, in this case, you are responsible for the general welfare of the city. And yeah, like how do you tie that in to Bitcoin? Because for example, the mayor of Amsterdam, I don't know how big Vancouver is, by the way, in terms of, if that's comparable to Amsterdam. That's
we're the biggest city on the planet and the best. No, I'm just kidding. So we the overall the metro area that's bigger, like more than just Vancouver. Mm-hmm. What people outside of Vancouver know as Vancouver, there's about just over 3 million people, and then in this actual city of Vancouver, now it's the economic hub. What have you? There's about 750,000 of us. Okay. So a good analogy would be San Francisco and then the Bay Area. Yeah. San Francisco, there's only about 900,000 people there. Yeah. But it's,
Well, that's similar to Amsterdam, actually. I think Amsterdam is closing in on like 850, 900K, something like that. But I wanted to bring it up because I think it's so interesting, right? Like you're both leading a city of a similar size. I hear you talk about Bitcoin is the greatest invention ever in human history, and the mayor of Amsterdam actually wants to shut down Bitcoin.
I once again, I'll say this respectfully. I do not know the mayor of Amsterdam. I'm sure the mayor is an incredible person. I was there like everyone else. But I think twofold. First of all, if people use the rationale that it's bad for the environment or it's used in organized crime, well, let's think about that. So organized crime, if that's the case, if we're going to ban things that are used to facilitate organized crime, then we should ban iPhones, you should ban cars, you should ban cash, because all three are used a lot in organized crime. So the argument's not really valid at the best of times, but then when you add the fact that it's an immutable record that can't be manipulated, I think only the dumb criminals believe that they're anonymous in Bitcoin in general, because you'll get caught on and off ramps and what have you. Like there's all these, you can basically figure out what's happened on the blockchain, and it's way easier to track than it would be cash. So that argument doesn't work. The environment thing, same thing. It's actually going to save the environment. So, if you capture natural gas that's flaring off or methane that's seeping through the earth and repurpose it, you actually release less pollutants into the atmosphere. And then green projects that wouldn't make economic sense, but for the fact that, miners are location and time agnostic. They basically provide all the demand for these renewable energy projects that then can get financing and built. So I think, mayors around the world should up their game in terms of getting up to speed. And after they get up to speed, if they want to make those comments, then fine, that's fine. But if you're making a comment from a place of not being informed, that becomes a little dangerous. The reason we're looking at it from a city of Vancouver's perspective is, look, currencies around the world are getting debased at an alarming rate. And so we know CPI doesn't mean anything. It's a very manipulated metric. And the real rate of inflation in Canada is between 10 and 15% per year. And so when I look at running the city, we can make things way more efficient. We can bring in AI. We can do all these things, make workflow better, all this stuff. We can't, even with all that, we cannot outrun 15% inflation year over year. And at some point in time, we are going to be faced with the decision, do we double property taxes or do we cut services by half? And that's not workable. Neither one of those solutions is workable. And so at the City of Vancouver, we have $3.2 billion in fixed income instruments, earning 88 basis points to like just under 4.5%, which really means every year that $3.2 billion is losing about $300 to $450 million a year in purchasing power. So as Mayor of Vancouver, I have a fiduciary responsibility not only to, hopefully see some of the challenges that we have, but explore alternatives in addressing them. And that's what we're doing at the City of Vancouver.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this was actually an answer to my question, because I think, as with many people, it starts at like a personal level, right? Yeah, researching and eventually understanding Bitcoin, understanding that, the future is uncertain for everyone and is basically becoming more uncertain through the debasement of all the money, right? And so everyone basically has this fiduciary duty for themselves, right? To lower that uncertainty towards the future, which is becoming harder and harder. And what I like about what you are doing is you just made the case that it's exactly the same for a city, right? Like it isn't really different for an individual, company, a city, a nation. To lower that uncertainty towards the future. Do you see any specifics for a city, for example? I mean, of course, there are some politics eventually involved, right? How do you make sure that the strategy that you're exploring, or like the different things that you're exploring, right? Because you had a motion that you introduced that was passed. So you're investigating how to become a Bitcoin friendly city, whether that's having a Bitcoin reserve or accepting payments for property taxes, parking tickets, etc. What's your plan on kind of like enshrining or making sure that Vancouver then eventually also stays a Bitcoin city?
Yeah, and look, I'll say it's going to be an uphill battle, but we're committed to it, and this is a hill worth dying on. And so if it means that I may not win the mayoral election in 2026, it would have been worth it. But we have a three-step plan. The first was to pass a motion to explore. And I just want to highlight the fact that it was completely ridiculous how hard it was to actually get that motion passed. For any other topic, when we say explore, it's basically saying, hey guys, can you look at something? There's no commitment whatsoever. But because it surrounded Bitcoin, and because we are early, and because of all the misinformation out there, there were politicians that were asking, what would the voters think? As opposed to, is this the right thing to do? And so we still have those, like all that negativity around it. Even good friends of mine who are incredibly bright, who understand finance, they take shots as well. In fact, there's a person who I have a lot of respect for. He set up a bunch of companies, incredibly shrewd as an entrepreneur and a business person, and an even better person. He's done so much for social causes around the planet. He called what we're doing stupid. And so that's okay. I still respect the guy. I have nothing bad to say about the person whatsoever. I'm still a big fan. I don't take that stuff personally. But then we got to chat, and we agree on everything. The only thing we don't, and we even agree on the debasement of the currency. He likes gold. I like Bitcoin. And so we have a bet. We both put $10,000 Canadian down. He's going to invest it in gold. I'm going to invest it in Bitcoin. We're going to reassess after 5 years where it's at. And by the way, the gold and the Bitcoin is going to youth charity for underprivileged kids. So we all win. We have a good laugh, and we'll see what happens. But I'm just telling you, that's the negativity that we went through and how hard it was to pass that motion. Then we have a second, that report's going to come back, at which point in time we're going to vote on that report. And that happens in May. And I hope the report comes out as a great report. And we've had people in the community who are like Jeff Booth and Sarah Morton and a whole bunch of other people educating people at the City of Vancouver and the councillors around Bitcoin. And so hopefully that report comes out great. If it misses the mark, I'll file an amendment to it and say, no, I think we should do this and the other instead, and then we'll vote on it. That vote will be incredibly tight as well, but hopefully we win. And as an aside, there's a by-election in 12 days where there's 2 councillor spots up for grabs, and those 2 individuals, they understand Bitcoin and they're supporters. So if they get elected, then we should be able to pass it. And then the third phase, which is the super important one, is when we get permission to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We still have to go to the province or the equivalent of our state government and ask for permission. They've already said no; they're not going to do it. So, that's a battle we can cross later, but there are a couple of outs. One, we're looking as to whether or not we can invest in ETFs without asking for permission. If we can, then we have a path forward. If not, we're going to have to do a lot of work convincing the provincial government as to why this is just sound financial planning. And we'll let the province know. And I'm sure it's the case in a lot of jurisdictions. You have lower levels of government always asking senior levels of government for handouts. We don't want a handout. We don't want any money. We want to set ourselves up so we don't have to ask senior levels of government for money. All we need is our own sovereignty when it comes to fiscal management. And that's just what we're asking for. And if we do our jobs right, we will get that. And then, when we run out of money 10 years under a Fiat standard, we don't have to beg senior levels of government for money. And by the way, they probably won't have it anyways because they're dealing with the same challenges that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. I love how I hear the selflessness through you talking, right? Like, and I've seen it with many Bitcoiners that they think they are contributing to a thing that is bigger than them, right? Like I heard you say before, like you don't really care about the politics, if they vote you away, for example, like that. You've actually tried. What do you think makes it so that many people act like this once they understand Bitcoin?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I would 100% agree with you. It seems like the pattern is, except for the original gangsters, everyone was pessimistic and against it. Then they got educated on it. Then something clicked, and then they were excited about it. And they're probably, if they're in it for more than a year, they're irritating because they can't stop talking about it, and they want to help people. And it is selfless. I don't know how we all got there, but that is the pattern. And it's really cool. And everyone's treated like an equal. If you have, 200 Satoshis or 200 Bitcoin, no one knows and no one cares. And they just, they believe in it. And people are humble and selfless. It's great.
So being a Bitcoin proponent in general gets you a lot of comments and unfounded critiques, as we just mentioned. But, how are you, of course, also in your position, how are you dealing with that? Like keeping, I'd say, the enthusiasm, the patience, etc., to kind of like keep going, because of course, well, like you said, there are even people that you respect tremendously that say this is a stupid, stupid pursuit. How do you deal with that personally?
Well, I'm used to it. I have a family of 4 kids and a wife who say that all the time about me on a whole host of topics. So I think the training at home definitely helped out. But no, all joking aside, how I mentioned that I have no aspirations to be a prime minister. I do this because our 4 boys did not see a future for themselves in Vancouver. And so running for office was not a stepping stone for anything whatsoever. It was more about, doing our civic duty. Other people came before us to make this place great. And I think it's incumbent on us to pay it forward because we benefited from all the sacrifices that a lot of people made who came before us. And so, when there's a purpose, it's easy to pick yourself up at 11 o'clock at night or 4 o'clock in the morning when you just had your, you took a shot to the gut, so to speak, and you just, keep plugging away. It's kind of like entrepreneurship. If you believe in what you're doing and you love what you're doing, that's what makes the difference between quitting or, getting out of bed at 11 o'clock at night and pounding on something because it's just in there. And so this is another example. I know what's at stake here, the future of the city that we love, opportunity for all of our kids and us and, future generations. And we can create something incredibly special here. And so if and when we pull it off, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And if we fail, I don't mind failing on this one because it was worthwhile and it was bold.
I agree. It's very bold, and it's also you just said it in a byline, or that someone said, what will the voters think? But isn't it actually? I don't want to say easy, but rationally, it's you can explain pretty well probably what this would do for the city of Vancouver, for the people that are living there, for their children, their grandchildren, etc. Right? Like, as it made rational sense for both of us to adopt this, right? There's a rational explanation as to why a city could adopt this, and so I think it's really a Fiat argument, actually, don't you think? When you say like, what will the voters think? Well, why would you doubt that you're doing something that is not in their best interest?
It's funny. Politics are. I think. The system has created an environment where politicians get rewarded to misleading people and thinking in short-term, thinking in the short term. Because if you're a politician, first of all, you get rewarded for telling people what they want to hear, or dividing people, one of the two, and sometimes they're linked. And then you're rewarded for thinking in the short term. Like, we could increase property taxes by, let's say, another 2% per year to go towards plumbing, stuff that's built, the pipes underground. Mm-hmm. And the net payout for that would be 25 years from now, we'll be able to flush toilets in the city of Vancouver. So super, not sexy. No one's thinking 25 years out, even though it's the right thing to do. All they see is, you've increased property taxes in the short term. You must be fiscally irresponsible and you lied to us. You know what I mean? And so people don't get rewarded for the right behaviors, but they get rewarded for short-term thinking. And right now people are piling on us because, Bitcoin looks a little weird. And of course it looks weird. No one's ever seen anything like it in human history, and we're early. But that doesn't make it wrong. And so I don't know if I answered your question there, but that's what we're facing. Now, one thing I'd like to add, though, what I've been amazed about is I knew there were closeted Bitcoiners. I didn't realize how many of us there were. Mm-hmm. Every day someone comes by and they're like, we love what you're doing with Bitcoin, and we hold Satoshis as well, and this is what we're doing. But they're all quiet because they get ostracized. Well, I can tell you the world's changing, and it's changing fast, and those days are numbered.
I think what has been a big insight for me is that when you think about big institutions, or government, or even local government here, right? It's all comprised of individuals, and as you just laid out, right, like the use case to lower your uncertainty around, towards the future, while every week almost when you go to the supermarket, the prices rise, right? Like each individual, whatever your job is or whatever big corporation you're part of, when you go home and you eventually go to the supermarket or want to buy other stuff or see your property taxes go up, right? Like you need to do something. And so that realization has been a very positive one for me, because I know that the individuals will figure it out, and their loyalty towards their own lives, right, and their families is of course way higher than whatever organization they are tied to earn their salary. So slowly but surely, one by one, people will see that this is an escape to a whole new monetary system from the system that they're basically trapped in. And I've also met a lot of closet Bitcoiners and in very high places, actually, that are just silent about it, right? But they see where it's going, and they know that they have to do something not only for themselves but only for their families, and yeah, that's just way more important.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to be overly dramatic, and I think part of this is just by circumstance. I was lucky to have a son who exposed this to me. I was also lucky to be good friends with Jeff Booth, who really got me up on the learning spectrum. I'm also fortunate where, we have a life where we actually have a company. I'm an entrepreneur, and so we don't have to worry about making rent or putting food on the table. And so all these things have come together, and we're able to lead the charge, be one of the first cities on the planet to make a big move when it comes to Bitcoin. And I know the world's watching for us to be successful. And when we're successful, we give other cities and other provinces and states and countries even more license, more so on the municipal level because it's happening on the state and the national level. But on the city level, it's not really happening because people are afraid. We know there's actually a couple other cities in our province here, British Columbia, who are thinking about it as well, and they still haven't done anything. They're waiting for how this plays out. And so there's a lot more riding on this than just the city of Vancouver. And it wouldn't it be great if the whole world was on a Bitcoin standard and cities could actually, run themselves? Because you know what? As much as I'm a proud Vancouverite, I love traveling and I want to see every single city succeed, because when I come by and visit them, I'm not looking to go into some place that's bankrupt, that has significant challenges and the people are suffering. We want to go and enjoy the culture and all the positive nuances of all the cities that we visit.
If you have your Bitcoin in self-custody, where are you keeping your Bitcoin seed words? For me, there's only one way, and it's backing up my seed phrase with stamp seed. It's a single durable plate without any parts or materials. Stamp your words into solid titanium, which is fire-resistant, water-resistant, and built to last. Unlike etching or engraving, stamp seed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, making it easy for you to protect your generational wealth. Don't risk losing your seed phrase on paper. Get a stamp seed plate for unmatched protection. You can use code BRAM, that's BRAM, for 15% off at stampseed.com. Yeah, of course. So if these 3 steps actually work out, how do you believe adopting Bitcoin as the city of Vancouver could contribute to economic growth of the city, or for example, attracting new businesses, talent, etc.? What does it look like when this plan works out?
Well, I think it's twofold. First of all, when we do it, we'll be able to run our city, which, not super sexy, but, the alternative is if our streets are in disrepair, if it's not safe to come to the city of Vancouver, if it's hard to get a permit, if trash removal doesn't happen, guess what? Our city fails anyways. Okay, so right there, by shoring up our balance sheet, that's a big deal. The second thing is, I think there are some benefits to leading. We're sending a signal to the rest of the planet that Vancouver's open for business. We understand Bitcoin. We have an ecosystem here. You have, a city hall that is very amenable to making this happen. And we actually understand it. This is not just a soundbite where we go, hey, Bitcoin's kind of cool. Let's, put it on a couple of advertisements. No, we understand it. We understand the implications of it. And so, come to Vancouver, start your companies up here. If you want to work in the ecosystem, guess what? There are going to be companies. There already are companies that are working here. I don't know if you know this or not, but Vancouver was the first city to have a Bitcoin ATM, as an example, right? So there's a lot of Jeff Booth. He's from the region, but we like to own him as our own. He's from a suburb of Vancouver, but he's basically from Vancouver. So there's a big ecosystem here, and so and it's going to get better and better and better. So when you add all that stuff up, and the fact that we understand where some of the roadblocks are, one of them will be the federal tax treatment of Bitcoin. Right now, every time you transact, it's a capital event, so you have to pay taxes. on each transaction. So we understand that, and we'll be lobbying the federal government to change that, as an example. So we understand it, and we're promoting it, and it's over time, it's going to be a Bitcoin, the Bitcoin hub on the planet.
You just mentioned that there's also other places around that are having plans. Did you had like other mayors reach out yet, like more globally perhaps, or like from other countries? Because why I wanted to ask is that usually, or a lot of times, you see, I'd say in Bitcoin, like taking the action is already kind of like the inspiration, right? Like even if you if you don't make it, right, if it doesn't pass, if you don't get here and someone votes you out, whatever, you still tried it, right? And like the trying, there's already a lot of inspiration in the trying, and you going on podcasts like this, just sharing like, this is what I'm trying to do. Have you had other people reach out? Of course, you don't have to say who, but like I find that interesting to see if it works on the mayor level, city level as well.
Yeah, there are a couple of cities in our province that I know were working on it, but they have not reached out yet. So that's okay. If anyone wants to reach out, great. I did meet with the mayor of Santa Monica. Actually, in San Salvador, we shared a stage together and we got to know each other. And, they're trying to make it work in Santa Monica. And in fact, the firefighters in Santa Monica, they have Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So it's a pretty progressive thinking union down there. So, there is some movement, but I would still say, based on the number of people that have reached out to me from a government perspective, we're still really, really, really early.
Yes. So we kind of talked about this, but a little bit. But let's say everything does work out. You start becoming the Bitcoin city. How do you plan to educate the people of Vancouver, right? Because I mean, the citizens have to understand, of course, to a degree. Why are we adopting Bitcoin? What are the benefits of Bitcoin for us? If you thought about that, like how do you ensure that they are informed around Bitcoin, so the strategy and all the activities don't stop right after your tenure, basically?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm planning on being in office for another 6 years. So I'm 2 years into our first term, going to run again. So we'll have 6 years to massage that message. So it gives us a higher probability of success. If and when we get this on the balance sheet, the first thing we're going to tell people is, look, we are not day traders. This is not something that we're going to buy and then look for a little bump and then sell out of. This is a multi-generational foundational asset for the benefit of the city of Vancouver. And so it will be telling in 6 months. I think I think as we learn more and more about the rate of change in technology, especially AI, I don't think anyone who understands it can predict what the world looks like in 5 years. But if I were to draw a great state of where I would like to see the city be in 6 years, is one, hopefully Bitcoin has taken off, and we can just point to the fact that our small, whatever it will be, maybe it's 5% of assets invested in Bitcoin is worth more than all our other assets combined. It's pretty hard to argue against that. We're kind of hoping, I think in 6 years, based on the network effects of Bitcoin, I think it's almost going to be a non-issue because there's so many people are going to be on it and way more people are going to understand it. I think we'll be in a position where people go, what do you mean you still don't understand Bitcoin? That's like saying you don't understand how to use an iPhone. That's kind of crazy. The one thing I'm hoping against is, and we just have to wear this risk, is if we get the go-ahead to invest in Bitcoin and in the first year it dips 50%, we have to fight that narrative, and all the haters will come out and they'll weaponize it against us. But we can't worry about that. We have to do what's right, and there is risk involved. And I know we'll come through it because if we hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet and it does dip and we're still in office, we can ride it out. And I know you just look at first principles. This thing is either going to zero or infinity, and I don't think it's going to zero.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I had a previous conversation with Peter Dunworth, who you might know. We talked about how now, for example, with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, kind of that left tail and that risk is kind of like gone, right? Like, and I agree with you. I also see Bitcoin in the same way. Like, it either goes to zero, or it's the value measurement of the world, or the black hole of value, or however you want to describe that, right? Like, there's not really anything in between. And I also agree that kind of like that risk of going to zero, that's fading and fading, because, well, as we talked about, like, just, individual by individual, organization by organization, people are becoming aware that this is not only the ultimate savings technology, right? But the hardest asset to ever exist, and so you have to pay attention to that. So, what I actually want to ask is, if we think about this future, and I mean, you talk to Jeff Booth, so you know how he talks, right, about the abundance, etc. Is there a way that we can paint a picture for citizens of a city or a country as to what that might look like, right? Because you are asking them to have a long-term vision, right? You're setting a long-term vision where, of course, for many people in their individual lives, that's already a really hard thing to do, because many people are struggling just with the current economics, etc. Do you have any ideas around that? Because, for example, when I hear Jeff talk about that, I'm just like, yeah, that's where I want to be,
Well, it's catch-22. I don't know what we can do from a city perspective, but beyond being a role model, so that people can point to and they'll look at the success of the city. But then we have all of our employees and all the people that live in the city, and they'll benefit from it. But it's kind of a catch-22. A lot of people are struggling because they are getting paid in worthless pieces of paper. And so every year that passes on by, it seems like we're, as a society on fiat currency, we're digging a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger hole. And so it's incredibly difficult to become, forget about prosperous, just to keep your head above water. And so when we flip that equation and Bitcoin becomes ubiquitous and people actually start getting paid in Satoshis, and they don't have to worry about 15% debasement per year, which will probably get worse if we do not go on a Bitcoin standard. All of a sudden, people can start to catch up and actually plan for the future. And it'll be a wonderful place.
Yeah. I'm unsure about if you have any political affiliation or like how that goes in Canada. But from what I'm following, there's now a new leader. I know you don't really want to talk about politics, but I'll avoid the politics.
I'll talk about politics. Okay. That's
fine. But of course, there's also a challenger who is actually into Bitcoin. I think he understands Bitcoin. Yeah. Let's say he eventually gets elected. Do you think that will do anything for Canada more on a nation level, or is it going to be just as big of a challenge as what you're trying to do here?
So I do want to put a qualification out that we do not take a position. Like we don't pick sides, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to work with whoever is in Ottawa, whoever the Prime Minister and their government is, and we will do that. And I also can't comment, when we're talking about other levels of government, I can't comment as to whether or not, our solutions are going to work. With everything, there's you don't have 100% certainty. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now that I got those qualifications up. Oh yeah, by the way, the third qualification, I should have done this earlier. Anything I say, it shouldn't be construed as investment advice. I'm not qualified to give investment advice, so don't trust, verify, do your own thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that I do feel that our currency is getting debased, and going to a hard currency will go a long way as to shoring up our cities' finances. And, if the federal government does the same thing, that's the same thing. And we know what's going on with game theory now that the U.S. has, said they're going to, add Bitcoin to their strategic reserve. And you have all these different states, and you have, El Salvador, Bhutan, the UAE, the Czech Republic, Belarus. So this is unfolding. So to not put Bitcoin on a strategic reserve as a nation, and if your only thing that you can fall back on is fiat currency, and we have these high levels of debt, and they're becoming unmanageable. Personally, I don't see how not going on Bitcoin is a solution.
I mean, that's my thought. Like, what would you do without Bitcoin? And that's a pretty depressive thought. If I ask other Bitcoiners, like, what would you do if you didn't have Bitcoin? And I think once you come to the understanding of the monetary debasement being programmatic and never ending, right? Then you'll have the realization that you'll always keep running against that very uncertain future that is just becoming more and more uncertain, basically. And so, I think you would agree when we say, like, that's why we say, like, Bitcoin is hope in that sense, that we can get somewhere, in the future. And I think many people kind of like share that view of the positivity. Maybe that's what gives us the motivation to actually try and see if this can be a bigger thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed, right?
We'll see. Yeah. So, what would your advice be to other leaders, whether it's in big companies, cities, countries, with regards to studying and adopting Bitcoin? I know we touched it a bit in the beginning, but like, how can people actually start? People that are in a similar position.
I would say be curious, be open-minded, right? And so try to unlearn what you've learned. The worst thing that happens if you approach something with an open mind, and you don't change your opinion, at least you approached it with an open mind and you validated what you believed in. But what would actually happen if you saw something that you didn't think about? Like, I think Jeff uses the example, like Galileo looks out into the stars through a telescope and realized that we had it all wrong. We actually weren't the center of the universe, right? And then he comes back and he looks like an idiot for whatever 330 years because other people didn't have access to a telescope. Well, there are a lot of people out there handing out telescopes once you look through it. And so what I would recommend is read the Bitcoin Standard. Watch God Bless Bitcoin. I found that's actually one of the best videos I've ever seen as an entry-level point for people to understand, like in general, what Bitcoin is and why it's important. And then just be curious. And I think if they do that. Oh, this is one thing I've done as well. I used to preach forever. I'd even hand out the Bitcoin Standard. That's what we do for anyone who wants a copy. They get a signed copy from myself. Limited effects. I started using Koinos and Wallet of Satoshi. To like Lightning apps where I basically, instead of explaining stuff, I give them $20 worth of Bitcoin. And it like literally within 2 minutes, people are up and running. They're like, what is this? What does it mean? And now they're starting to play with it.
Yes.
And so that's been a game changer here in basically trying to orange pill more people. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. When people see that magic of that instant payment, and then when you explain, like, okay, now it's actually in your position, like the number on the screen is not like in your banking app, just a number in a database. Like you actually have these units in your possession. I like the reactions there because people do understand to some degree, although maybe not super consciously, that the money in the bank isn't really theirs, right? And then it's just like a number, like they kind of know, but not like when you show something that is actually better and you can explain then how it works after they had that experience. That's a real eye-opening thing. I mean, not everyone is ready to read like 300 pages or plus of a book, of course. So yeah, I love that approach. Just make it very practical. I wanted to finish up with some personal questions if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, like, how. So, I mean, you came from this finance background, you dismissed it, you studied it. Now in this role, you're becoming a real advocate for this. How has Bitcoin changed your worldviews?
It's wild. I didn't fully realize the control system that we're living in. And it's not just in our country, it's around the world, and how other, nation states or communities have been oppressed. Now, I didn't even think about, the value of money, or the restrictions we have on it, and how we actually don't have sovereignty. And ever since I've, gotten more into the space and understand it and sort of play with it, life has been better. And the future looks incredibly bright, and it's exciting. So from that perspective, it's been incredibly liberating.
Yeah, I love that. I think many Bitcoiners would share that with you, just a positive outlook towards the future. When you compare that with people who are unconsciously still stuck in that system, right? Like, I think the benefits become really clear really quickly. And doesn't really matter how much Bitcoin you have. I agree with that. It's more about understanding that you're doing something to fix your own situation, and that that is part of that hope. Nice. That's a great message. Maybe something spicy. I wanted to check with you. Do you have
By the way, you can ask any question.
Anything? All right, let's go. What's a spiky point of view you have on Bitcoin that maybe not many people share with you? Like, what's a point where you think like, ooh, many people will disagree with me?
If we're talking about the general population, the fact that we're even talking about Bitcoin, it's a contrarian view. With the people that have been orange pilled a long time ago and understand it, I think my view would be, this thing's going closer to infinity. And I actually think it's going to happen really fast. I just don't understand how, I think of the US, their debt's insolvent, to a $2 trillion deficit. And to just solve that, you would have to get rid of two of the following three: the entire military budget, all of Medicare and Medicaid, or default on the interest payments. Get rid of the military, whether you agree with it or not, changes the entire world order. And there are probably a lot of wars all over the world, settling of scores. You get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, there probably have a civil war in the United States. And if you default on the debt, well, you've accelerated the process. And they have to get rid of two of the three just to pay debt, like get rid of the deficit. We're not even talking about the 36 trillion they have in debt. And so I just don't see how the system doesn't fail. And I don't think it's 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And so maybe if they migrate all over to a Bitcoin standard really fast, maybe there's some solving it. But then that's just the US. What about every other country out there that is facing a similar challenge? I think this is going to be way bigger and a lot faster than even most optimistic Bitcoiners believe. But what do I know? We'll find out in 5 years.
Well, I mean, it's a very rational thought, right? And I think I come back to that a lot. Like, a lot of thoughts that I have around Bitcoin are very rational, and sometimes, and maybe you have the same. Like, on your journey, you're like, yeah, am I the only one who thinks this? Like as you just explained, that's just to get rid of the deficit and not even, all the debt of America. And so they keep playing the game with the government bonds, and they're trying to get the interest down so they can still borrow and then pay it off. Like, it's just following the same game. But if you look out like 5 years into the future, then the problem has probably grown. So how can you continue on a path that is basically not sustainable? And yeah, I think you can only do that if you're kind of ignorant. If you just dismiss what you just said, then it's easy to continue playing that game, right? But once you just accept that as the reality that it is, then you have to come to the conclusion that you have to start playing like a totally different game. Like, you have to move to basically something else.
Well, it's kind of wild. We do have history behind us. Like, think of it. The U.S. dollar is the world currency. I think, it's I'm drawing a blank. It's the world reserve currency. Can we all agree on that? So if it's the world reserve, and we've had world reserve currencies prior to the U.S. dollar, is that correct? So what that tells us is every single world reserve currency before the US dollar failed. Why do we think this is going to be any different? The only thing that's different, for the first time in human history, we have something that cannot be manipulated, and there's a hard cap at 21 million, and it changes everything. And that's one of the reasons why I think it is the greatest invention in human history. It's mind-blowing.
I think that's a great argument. It's probably because people actually have the information. In the other times it just happened. So people were like, yeah, okay, what's happening? But now sometimes it seems like the more information people have, the more apprehensive they get. Although, even if they know the information is true, like the more dismissive they get. I think it kind of has to do something with that. I mean, that's why Bitcoin is the ego test that it is, right? Like once you accept the fact that information, unfortunately, is true, only then you can kind of like get on this path of really studying Bitcoin and trying to figure out like what is that solution, Yeah, interesting. I have a last question, and I ask everyone the same question, which is what is a core belief that you will never let go?
Oh God, there are a bunch of them. The one I'll share with you today is just be kind. I think of, so we're parents, my wife and I, we have 4 kids. And as much as we have our definitions of what we think would be great for them to be successful, we've never imposed anything on them. But the one thing that we want them to be is be kind and healthy. Obviously, we want them to be healthy. But if they're kind and healthy, really doesn't matter what they do. And I would consider us being parents being it was pretty successful.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for sharing, and thanks so much for your time. I hope to visit your lovely city someday, and then maybe it'll be a Bitcoin city. We'll see, and I'll follow your journey with attention. So
okay, so Bram, I'm going to call you out on this. There is no such time as someday. Pick a date, write it down, make it happen. You call me, reach out to me, and we will get you totally set up, down, and it's going to be a blast.
Let's do it. We're making that promise here, okay?
Awesome. Love it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Great.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.